Broadly speaking, the happiest people on earth are 19-and-a-half-year-olds. This can be partly attributed to their pain free joints and relative lack of any real responsibilities, but mostly this phenomenon has to do with the way the human brain develops. At 19-and-a-half years old, a person has achieved enough consciousness to properly appreciate the wonders of the world around them, but has not yet developed the latent but important awareness that every one of those wonders could be taken from them in an instant. Consequently, no one can indulge in a warm spring day, a freshly baked pastry, or a choice parking spot with quite the same carefree verve that a 19-and-a-half-year-old can. This is a short lived gift. Sometime around a person's 20th birthday, the nauseating comprehension of life's brevity and the suffocating obligation to live it well take a significant amount of the shine off of any remaining wonders. From there, it only gets worse. Kevin Miller had 4 more months to go until his 20th birthday, so it's understandable that as he navigated Thistlebrook University's winding paths on his way back to his dorm, he was not thinking about the dangers of walking alone through campus late at night. Kevin was a sophomore and physics major at Thistlebrook University. He had a 3.8 GPA and a steady girlfriend. As an extracurricular, he played for the college's Division I football team, on which he was a wide receiver. He was allergic to shellfish, not fond of cats, and was mere minutes away from dying a spectacularly unpleasant death. There was a 7 p.m. curfew currently in effect for students who lived on campus, put in place recently after the fourth student in only 2 months had disappeared without a trace while walking alone at night. With no culprit or even suspect yet identified, the administration had made the only decision it could. The pattern implied that the recipe for a disappearance consisted of nighttime plus student. Since the Sun wasn't known for adhering to administrative policy, they had chosen instead to bar the students from all outdoor areas from dusk until dawn each night. This new policy was enforced via a crisp sheet of A4 paper saying as much, taped to the glass front door of each dorm building. In the early aughts, Thistlebrook's administration had developed the point of view that any university library worth its salt should be open 24 hours a day, and had promptly introduced the new schedule with much fanfare. When it had shortly thereafter become evident that there was not enough student traffic to warrant this schedule, professors had been encouraged to assign more work than could possibly be completed during the daylight hours, ensuring around the clock need for library services. Even now, despite the curfew and defying logic in that way that only bureaucratic institutions of higher education are capable, Thistlebrook's library remained open 24 hours per day. The policy was simple, if not well considered. Students were under no circumstances allowed in the outdoor space between their dorm building and the library after 7 p.m., but they were certainly allowed in the library itself. Kevin had been at the library for several hours, engrossed in his studies and ruminating on the wave particle duality of quantum mechanics, which was not a common thing for wide receivers to ruminate on at other universities. He hadn't once thought about the late hour, nor the risk of walking back to his dorm. Instead of thinking about the potential for his abduction, Kevin was thinking about a topic far more common in the minds of 19-and-a-half-year-olds the world over. He was thinking about food. More specifically, he was thinking that he could really go for a midnight snack. Coincidentally, the thing that was watching Kevin from the shadows was having the exact same thought. The thing had been lurking around campus for quite a few hours already, looking for someone appetizing. This was the type of choosiness only available to those who are already well fed. It was the difference between hungering for something and simply wanting to taste it. Because it could afford to be discerning, the thing opted to stay hidden a bit longer, just to be sure of its choice, following Kevin doggedly with silent, careful footsteps. For several minutes, Kevin continued to walk and dream about the hot pocket he would microwave when he got to his dorm room. The thing continued to lurk behind him. Lurking is a skill, and it is done best when it has been honed through millennia of practice. Tonight, this thing was lurking with the best of them, and doing so in style. Never had anything crept so silently, kept so completely to the shadows, nor radiated such an aura of ominousness, all while looking svelte in a double-breasted peacoat and corduroy trousers. Alas, the tragedy of lurking is that the better you do it, the less recognition you get, something the thing had lamented on many occasions in its long life. Kevin turned onto the brick path that deviated from the maze of walkways between the academic buildings and veered off toward the dorms. The night seemed to grow darker around him as a cloud overtook the crescent moon and cast shadows of Thistlebrook's spiring towers even more deeply. The thing made its decision. Still, there was work to do. Kevin was not ripe. He had within him the everyday dread that persists in all overworked students, but the thing knew that a complex flavor profile required development of true, urgent fear. Before Kevin would be worth eating, the thing would need to make him very, very afraid. Humans, as much as they like to pretend otherwise by indulging in such activities as religion, philosophy, and Zumba, are animals. This means that they are equipped with a certain set of innate instincts. These can be hard to perceive in modern society, couched as they are between a myriad of artificially created feelings that humans have invented to punish themselves for existing. Still, these basic intrinsic abilities eke their way through the cluttered subconscious like weeds through the cracks in a sidewalk and manifest themselves from time to time, often when they are needed most. Though the sun shines brightly, something tells you to bring your umbrella, and that afternoon you save a fresh spray tan from disaster. You find yourself unexpectedly not hungry at your aunt's backyard wedding, and you are the only one who does not succumb to a particularly spectacular bout of food poisoning. You hear the scrape of an Oxford shoe against the weathered brick path behind you, and you know suddenly that there will be no hot pocket in your future, because you are going to die. Kevin felt his heart rate pick up, even as he mentally dismissed the realization. Surely, he lied to himself, the footsteps he was now hearing steadily behind him were those of another student out late, defying the administration with their commitment to their studies. There was nothing to worry about. Nonetheless, he began to walk more quickly. Though 4 students had already gone missing, Kevin hadn't previously considered it possible for him to become a victim of the mysterious campus disappearances. To start with, Kevin was named after his father, Kevin Miller Sr., a particle physicist who had his own Wikipedia page dedicated to the advancements he'd made in his field. If Kevin went missing, how would Wikipedia differentiate? Surely going missing wasn't enough of a life accomplishment that it would supersede world impacting scientific discoveries, but undoubtedly it would be in far too poor taste to house the story of his demise under Kevin Miller disambiguation. This in itself was, in Kevin's mind, enough of a conundrum to preclude the possibility of his becoming a victim altogether. But add in the fact that he had a dentist appointment coming up on Tuesday, and the whole idea seemed laughable. Now, as he heard the footsteps behind him match his quickened pace and found himself too afraid to turn around and look at his pursuer, Kevin started to sweat inside his winter parka. His youthful brain begrudgingly developed inside of his skull, and new, unwelcome arguments in favor of his victimhood raced through his mind. He began to worry that he might have a smile that lit up a room. And, come to think of it, he joined all of those clubs in high school to pad his Thistlebrook application. With the right spin, that kind of civic engagement might designate him as a beloved fixture of the community. Worst of all, Kevin felt a lump in his throat as he remembered his current public LinkedIn profile picture. It showed him in great lighting, smiling, holding a football. What had he been thinking? It was as if it had been taken expressly with the intent of being shown on the evening news and later being flashed in negative as part of a true crime documentary series. The truth of his predicament radiated through him like a lightning bolt. Kevin was now convinced that there had never been anyone more doomed to disappear than himself. Still, he could not bring himself to look over his shoulder. Up ahead, he spotted the beacon-like glow of a blue emergency call box. Dropping all pretense, he broke into an all-out sprint toward it. Kevin's sprint was not terribly impressive. It should be mentioned here that Thistlebrook's University football team played in Division I, not of the National Collegiate Athletics Association, NCAA, but Division I of the Northeastern Zone Academic Athletes, NZAA, an alternative which had been invented to give the Ivy League schools any chance at all of being competitive, and which had the added benefit of being verbally indistinguishable from its counterpart if spoken quickly enough. Even if Kevin had been as fast as a Division I NCAA wide receiver, it wouldn't have mattered. The thing was faster, primarily because it was able to switch from using its human legs to its other legs, which were 6 feet long and 7 in number. It scuttled forward with a halting gait, contorting itself to circumvent the hazy blue glow of the emergency call box until it was no longer behind Kevin, but in front of him, just out of sight beyond the circumference of the call box's light. It waited for Kevin to catch up. Blood was rushing fast and loud in Kevin's ears when he passed the threshold into the light, and though he strained, he could not hear whether the footsteps were still pursuing him. His eyes darted wildly around, but he saw only the faint outlines of tall buildings and barren trees in the bleakness beyond. He hovered a finger over the emergency call button, beginning to question his gut instinct. In the face of real immediate danger, pressing a button generally has little effect regardless of what that button is connected to. The blue emergency call boxes on college campuses function more as a deterrent than as a means of helping someone who is actively being harmed, and the figures are encouraging on their ability to deter certain types of despicable crimes. Despite the lack of peer-reviewed data on their impact on eldritch, human-eating creature-related crimes, it can be safely assumed that said impacts are likely minimal and that the series of events that unfolded would not have been changed regardless of whether Kevin pressed the call button. As it happened, he did not. Kevin did not press the call button because instead of a predator, what he saw emerge from out of the darkness beyond and join him in the neon blue light was a familiar face. It was the long and gaunt face of his Tuesday and Thursday afternoon statistical mechanics lecturer, Dr. Hank Wayne. Dr. Wayne, Kevin breathed out in relief, his elastic mind more than capable of snapping right back into a shape that was certain he'd never been in any danger at all. The visions of swirling black voids and shrieking faces more suited to the imaginations of 20-year-olds had retreated and were replaced again with that of a rotating hot pocket. Dr. Wayne's features were set in their usual expression. an unimpressed sort of grimace. His bushy eyebrows half flopped over his eyes like a set of valence curtains from the 1990s. He stared not at Kevin, but oddly out over his left shoulder. Mr. Miller, you do know there's a curfew in effect for students, I presume? He quipped in his posh English accent. Hank Wayne was an unusual name for someone from England, to be sure, but Hank hadn't decided that he wanted to be British this time around until after his name had been printed in the course catalog in 1998, and his request for it to be reprinted had been denied. The academic community was a polite one, though, and no one had ever questioned him about it. Kevin held his hands up defensively and shook his head. I know. Don't worry. I'm going back to my dorm right now and I won't do it again. I promise. I'm afraid it's too late, the professor replied, his voice flat. Kevin shivered a bit, registering the briskness of the night air again after his momentary panic. Now that he was looking properly, there was something strange about the way that Dr. Wayne was standing. Though Kevin could see his top half, he seemed as though he must be leaning forward at an unnatural angle because everything from his waist down was out of sight beyond the lit area of the path. He also appeared to be noticeably taller than he should have been. In contrast to the manic terror that had been coursing through him moments ago, Kevin now felt a slower moving, nauseating sort of dread rising up his throat like bile. He swallowed thickly around it. What do you mean? Dr. Wayne made a less familiar expression then. In fact, it was an expression Kevin had never seen on a human face before, because the human face is not set up for collapsing completely, jaw unhinging, bones and muscles and tendons drawing back toward the neck until all that remains is the gaping void of a mouth. 11 minutes later, a gentle but insistent early spring breeze quietly swept away the small pile of white dust that had once been Kevin Miller.